It's Sunday morning, and we are protecting military families on 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. And we are protecting those families with Chris Brochu. Chris, welcome back. It's episode 3. We're in it now. Last week, we talked a lot about life insurance. We're going to do the same thing this week, talk Interpleader as well. A lot of stuff to talk about, but we're not going to bury the lead. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. A married man. Is that right?
That's right. Good morning, Casey. Can't wait to discuss our topics today. Really important topics, contesting life insurance policies and the intersection where life insurance, contesting a policy meet Interpleader. Interpleader is going to be this fancy legalese that we're going to use today. It's a legal word that if you haven't heard of it, you may not think you need it. And if you have heard of it, chances are pretty good that you're going to want to learn more about it. But essentially, anytime you hear today the word interpleader, and we're going to say this several more times, anytime you hear interpleader, it simply means when a life insurance company does not know who to pay.
Exactly. And that's what I know from this at this point, and we're going to learn more about it as we go along. If you missed any of the next hour, WOKV.com or Chris's website, brochulaw.com, you can find a video stream version of the episode. Our guy Justin at Nova Productions hooking us up with that. If you need his help, video, photo, anything, novaproductionsjax.com. That's how you can find Justin's information. All right. We left off last week talking about life insurance. You just talked about Interpleader, but let's start here. We talked about a little bit of the denials of life insurance policies. Let's go back there. Let's talk about that. Why are life insurance policies being denied? What are some reasons that does happen?
The most common ones would be related to some defense, right? You've got potential fraud, undue influence, right? Undue influence is where I've got a close relationship with a family member, and I'm kind of nudging them to cut everyone out of a policy and maybe make me the sole person. You've got duress. Duress is that actual physical force, right? You have forgery. You have lack of mental capacity, right? So the person had no idea what they were signing. You have the inability to actually sign, like the person doesn't have the physical capability to sign, right? They're so weak. Typically someone in the final days of their life. And then you have other scenarios too, right? Where this is a really gruesome one. It's called Slayer. You think that it's probably once in a blue moon, but it's honestly more common than you see somebody that's a beneficiary for their own gain, right? Does something to injure or fatally harm the insured.
Sure.
So they would be excluded, those types of things. And then also some of the other common ones that we see too is somebody left all of the policy proceeds to minor children. Most states would prohibit that. You can't just give a minor child a lump sum payment to put in a checking account. There are certain things that you have to do to safeguard that money until they reach, the legal age. There are other times where the person doesn't name a beneficiary. There are other times where the primary beneficiary is actually passed away. So when the insured dies, the primary beneficiary is also dead. So who does the money go to now? There are other times too where you have several people that are, the insured said, okay, Casey, you get 50% and Justin, you get 60%. So that equals 110%. That doesn't equal 100. Therefore, interpleader, right? And therefore denial. And when we say denial, it doesn't necessarily mean that the insurance company isn't going to pay, but it just means that they're not going to pay you without you having to go through the legal process. So those are two different distinctions.
Yeah, let me go back to this one real quick because it kind of triggered in my mind. So you said, obviously, if the beneficiary is under a legal age, you can't give them thousands of dollars. Sure, I understand that part of it, but it has to happen, right? Like in obviously a horrible situation, you could easily have two military parents, something horrible happens. How does that work exactly? You said they hold it and they but how do we make sure that eventually gets paid out in the right way?
Absolutely. So I can tell you again, these are cases that I take all over the country, and how I do it is I'm licensed to practice law in the state of Florida, but as long as I have local counsel in a federal court where I have a client that's either filing a lawsuit or already been sued in a lawsuit, as long as I have that local counsel, there's a mechanism that would allow me to practice anywhere in the country, and that's how I do it. I mean, I've got cases in the past that I've done in California, New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, obviously Florida. Administratively, I've got cases in, all over the country. So what it comes down to is really a couple of things with minors. Is it a policy that's naming minors, or do minors have a right that maybe you've got to protect them, right? So in the first scenario, you can't give money to minors because they're minors. You've got to safeguard that money. So that would be a scenario where they say, great, we're going to file an interpleader. Again, insurance company doesn't know who to pay, or they can't pay it. So a minor or somebody with some sort of incapacity, right? Or they had a special needs trust or something like that. So essentially the money would be safeguarded. In a situation where I represented a military family, the father was in the Army and it was a veterans group life insurance policy. Essentially what happened was the veteran that passed away had removed his ex-spouse and put his eldest daughter or the daughter that he wanted to kind of control the payout.
Sure. And
I represented two minors, and essentially what he said was, hey, if and when I pass away, you're in charge of, chopping up the money. Well, what happened was, unfortunately, he passed away, and the eldest daughter, who was, well into her 20s, told my two minor clients, I don't know what you're talking about, right? And that, $400,000 that was supposed to be split up, is now potentially going to go to one person. So I get a call, is there something that I can do? And what we found was when the individual actually called the life insurance company, the eldest child that was now claiming that the money was only hers.
Sure.
Before she ever got her attorney, right? Before she ever was told, oh no, we've got this new story, she broke down and said, yeah, my dad had wanted me to split this money. Now, of course, once we get a lawsuit involved and we've got case law and all of these things that come into play that would potentially affect a payout, not only in talks of settlement, but in terms of somebody actually receiving money, the dynamics change. But ultimately, something is better than nothing, because if you don't do anything and you don't notify the insurance company, they're not going to go out of their way and say, you know what, he did have 5 kids. Why would he just leave it to this one individual, right?
Right.
So as long as we can hopefully get to the insurance company before they pay it out and at least investigate whether or not the minors have a claim to the money, now we at least can know that you tried. You did something, right? You didn't just take the insurance company's word for it. You didn't take the other party's word for it.
Yeah, that is a crazy scenario that you had to deal with, and I'm sure you deal with a lot of things like that every day. And if you have a scenario like that you're in and you need Chris's help, case@brochulaw.com. That's BROCHU law.com. So that's how you can get a hold of Chris if you need help with that. Okay, so we talked about some of the denials, right? Why that would happen. What about contesting a life insurance policy? What if you just need to contest it, for lack of a better term? How does that work? How do people go about that? How do you deal with that when a client needs help with that?
Absolutely. So contesting, when you hear that word contesting, just think of two people arguing over who's entitled to a policy.
It's a good way to look at it.
If you get, if you're the named beneficiary and somebody is saying, whoa, wait a second, I am not a named beneficiary, but I think I have a right to this policy, that is also a scenario where someone's contesting a policy. So you can see it one of two ways. We can assist with somebody that's a named beneficiary and help them try to protect the policy from an outsider trying to contest the policy. And then we also get calls from people where they say, you know what, my loved one told me about this policy. They said that I was going to be financially secure once my, loved one or spouse passed away. And then come to find out, once that individual does pass away, the money is going somewhere else. That's a situation where, at the very least, investigate it. Did that beneficiary change to this person? Was it proper? Was there any defense, like we talked about, undue influence, lack of mental capacity, fraud, forgery? Again, those are things that you've got to notify the insurance company. The insurance company may not know your family history. They may not know to look for certain things, and they're certainly not going to go out of their way unless you tell them to. And that's the best way to protect yourself. So the biggest thing to think about when you think of contesting, if you are a named beneficiary and someone's contesting, red flag, red flag, red flag. If you are not a named beneficiary and the insurance company hasn't paid out yet, you need to act immediately because of the fact that there's still something you can do if you have a legal right. And an attorney that practices life insurance law and Interpleader can help you figure out if there's an avenue to prove that you are entitled to certain proceeds. So that's where we come in. And if you have a delay, a denial, a question, if you're saying to yourself, there is no way they would have left it, I'm their spouse and they left it to a neighbor. There's no way that my spouse or loved one would have done that. Case at brochulaw.com, case, C-A-S-E, at brochulaw.com. Happy to speak with you, happy to provide you with a free consultation and review of your delay or denial and discuss what rights you may have.
Absolutely. This is 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk, and we're protecting military families with Chris Brochu. But, Chris, we can't assume everybody's listened to every minute of the show, but last week we talked about something that I think is worth bringing back up, and you just got into it there a little bit with the red flags. And you told me last week, if you submit a death certificate and you're supposed to get a payout due to a life insurance policy, and if you don't get it by 30 days, that's when the red flags come in. Can you just kind of reiterate for someone that might not have caught that last week how serious that is, 30 days, what they need to do if they're still waiting to hear back from an insurance company?
Absolutely. If you think that you're entitled to life insurance policy proceeds, if you believe that you are either a beneficiary or you are entitled to a policy payout, and you have submitted the insured's death certificate and also a beneficiary claim form, and you don't receive a check in the mail from the life insurance company within 30 days, red flag, red flag, red flag. And primarily, they may be gearing up to deny the claim, they may be gearing up to pay it to someone else, or they may be unlawfully withholding it. You never know why an insurance company does what they do. It just determines on the life insurance company and who is making a claim for that policy.
Absolutely. So if you're in that situation, like Chris just said, case, C-A-S-E, at brochulaw.com. He'll help you out with that. All right. It's time to talk about Interpleader and go deep into it. It's a fascinating word, but that's really just my own thing. So Interpleader, we talked about at the beginning, and what I have right here is Interpleader equals we don't know who to pay. As in we, I mean the insurance companies. I don't know how to pay anybody. But let's just go into it. Interpleader and life insurance, how do they collide? How do they peanut butter and jelly together, if you will?
Absolutely. I think one of the best words of advice or most the one piece of advice that I heard from a veteran one time that still resonates with me today is life is about having all of these tools, right? You have all of these tools and these ideas and you're informed about all these different areas and you may never need them, but if you do need them, you have them, as opposed to you need them and don't have them. So learning about Interpleader, it's the cases are super unique and it may not be something that you think you'll ever need to worry about, but I can assure you this, it is a legal concept that occurs more frequently than you think. It is the peanut butter and jelly with life insurance, and it is something that if you are in the middle of it or you are, contesting a policy, it's something that you'll need to know. So Interpleader, again, we've said it before, and I'm sure we'll say it again. Interpleader equals life insurance company does not know who to pay. Life insurance company does not know who to pay. Interpleader, right? That's the easiest way to break it down.
And by the way, not a spot you want to be in is between peanut butter and jelly. It's a real sticky spot to be in. Had to work that in,
Yep.
Good
No
job.
doubt.
But anyway, so what do you do when it comes to an interpleader situation? Like, how do you? I'm assuming that you help or make the life insurance companies figure out who to pay. But how does that work on your end when you deal with interpleader?
The life insurance companies typically know who may or may not have a claim, but it will come down to a cost-benefit analysis. So if the life insurance company receives a claim form and a death certificate from one person, and the life insurance company believes that that person's the named beneficiary, or maybe they're entitled to it, the life insurance company will go ahead and pay it out. But where the cost-benefit analysis of Interpleader comes in is the life insurance company will say, oh, wow, we've got Chris who submitted a claim form and a death certificate, and we have Casey who submitted a claim form and a death certificate. Who do we pay? And the insurance company, again, looking out for their own bottom line, is going to look at that and say, if we pay Casey and Chris is actually entitled to it, we're going to end up having to pay Chris as well, right? Double payment, double liability. They could be on the hook for even more if there are other damages or other financial harm that occurs. So the insurance company, what they'll do is if they receive competing claims, they'll take a step back and say, you know what? We don't really think we want to get involved here. Let's figure out what location the beneficiaries live. We'll figure out what court. And then what they do is they'll file an Interpleader complaint. So complaint equals lawsuit, right? Okay. Anytime you hear a complaint, think lawsuit. They file an Interpleader complaint. Remember, Interpleader, when a life insurance company doesn't know who to pay, right? There are other types of Interpleader as well, but this, for the purposes of this show, Interpleader equals when a life insurance company doesn't know who to pay. They'll tell the court in a complaint when they file the lawsuit, hey, court, we have this money. We know that one of these defendants, one or all, may have, may be entitled to it. They may be entitled to split it. One may be entitled to it. One may be contesting it. Regardless, we know that it doesn't belong to our life insurance company. So court, please protect this money and please let us off the hook. And the court will place that money into a secure registry with the court. And once, the lawsuit has run its course, the court will cut checks or cut a check to whoever they believe is entitled to the money. And so essentially once the life insurance company submits the policy proceeds, they'll ask the court to be released from the lawsuit. And as long as no parties object, the court will dismiss them from the lawsuit. And then the remaining parties will then continue on until the court determines who is, who's the proper beneficiary, who's entitled to the money.
Okay. You said something there that kind of flagged me, so I just want to get clarification on it. You said, obviously in a fictional scenario, if we both submitted death certificate and a beneficiary situation, is that a thing that happens? Like people, if they think it's been updated or it hasn't been updated, you could see why that happens. But is there ever situations where people submit a death certificate and maybe a document that's not necessarily correct? Is that something that you've ever encountered?
I have a case right now with some of the, I would say, most disturbing facts that I've seen, potentially all of the defenses that we've talked about before, fraud, forgery, undue influence, lack of mental capacity. It's something that it's a bigger problem than you think. People,
really,
the saddest part about all of the stories that you hear is these types of cases occasionally bring out the worst in people. So you see families get broken up over it. You see people fighting over money, and it gets a little bit nasty at times. And that's kind of the most disturbing part, is what people will do, cutting out, kids, cutting out spouses, cutting out relatives, people that aren't entitled to money, trying to obtain it somehow. So when I talk about all these topics, we're not talking about the movies where, I'm contesting, Tom Brady's relatives policy, right? Like it's not something frivolous. It's something where the client that calls me is like, hey, I am the child, I am the spouse, I am the close relative. This person is my loved one, and they always told me that I was their person. And now this person's coming out of the woodwork that's disputing the policy, or they've now somehow obtained, beneficiary designation, or they are claiming some right to it. Those are the common ones that you see, and they happen frequently.
Wow. That's sad for the first part, but you having to deal with that, obviously. Tell the people, by the way, just real quick, there's probably somebody listening that's going through something like this. Obviously, case@brochulaw.com is how they can get in contact with you. But we talked about it in an earlier episode, how you operate and how you are paid and how that works. So somebody's listening right now that's on the fence about maybe giving you a call, giving you an email, worried about the financial part of it for you. How do you operate with your firm about taking money and being paid for your services?
Sure. The person calling me most of the time is in a position where they are struggling emotionally. They've lost someone that could be the most important person in their life, or one of the most important people in their life. They could have a financial hardship. That person could have been the primary earner in their household. That person could be someone that, again, promised all of these things. So when the loved one calls me, the first thing that we look at is, okay, here are the things that we can do to investigate, and here's what we can receive. And, all of that investigation is done on a contingency fee basis. So we investigate, we conduct a free consultation. If it's a client that we don't think fits our criteria for representation, that's the end. The client doesn't owe us any money, and they're welcome to call someone else or continue on their own. If it is a case that we believe we can represent the client with, then we sign them up on a contingency fee basis. And essentially, the breakdown depends on what phase of settlement, but or again, adjudication. If you get to if you have to go to a trial, right? If we've got to get a claim and get it to judgment, or there's some resolution. It really just depends on where the life of a case. But we only get paid if you get paid, right? And there's no fee unless we win. There are costs associated, but we're going to advance all those costs. So unlike some of the other firms that take on these cases on an hourly basis that are going to require you to put up $10K up front, and they're going to bill, and again, their incentive is to put as much time in as possible because they're paid based off how much time they put in. But the real evaluation or equation should be, is the time actually beneficial to the case, right? And if it's not, then it's useless. And part of the reason why I like my model better is because the only way I get paid is if the client gets paid. Whereas the other model is win, lose, or draw, they're getting paid. They're never going to feel that financial effect or the actual loss that the client feels if they are working on that hourly basis or the retainer basis where they're getting money up front, because at the end of the day, they're paid either way. Whereas for us, we're completely in line with the client because we don't get paid unless the client gets paid. So
absolutely. So if you need him, case@brochulaw.com, BROCHU law.com if you need his services. On the other side, we have more to discuss with Interpleader. I got a lot more questions for Chris that he will answer and give you clarity on. So stick with us. This is 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. Welcome back, 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's News and Talk. It's Sunday morning, and we are protecting military families with Chris Brochu. If you need his help, brochulaw.com is how you can find it, BROCHU. By the way, if you missed any of the first hour, check it out on WOKV.com or on Chris's website, thanks to our guy Justin at Nova Productions. If you need his help, video or photo, novaproductionsjax.com. You can get in touch with him. Chris, before the break, we were talking about Interpleader, a lot about Interpleader, which, if you missed the first part of it, Interpleader means what exactly?
Interpleader, in this context, when a life insurance company does not know who to pay.
Perfect. So in that situation with a life insurance company, what are some of the defenses that they can use towards their clients that would eventually lead to Interpleader?
Yeah, so some of the defenses that my firm can assist with, because again, the life insurance company, they've got imagine they're protecting the bank vault, and you submit your key, and if there's a legal remedy or if they believe you have a legal cause of action, then it could lead to Interpleader. So some of the common defenses that we'll look at might be, again, fraud, undue influence, duress, forgery, some of those things. And again, fraud might be somebody submitting a bogus claim form, or maybe it's a bogus beneficiary designation that they're claiming was signed by the insured. Maybe it was somebody forged the signature, right? So that kind of fits in that same fraud category.
Absolutely.
Maybe it was somebody, just constantly at their loved one and doing some of these more hidden things, but they unduly influenced them. Maybe it was somebody forced them, right? They physically forced them to change it. And some of these scenarios, the average American would say, that doesn't happen. There's no way. You'd be surprised what people will do for money, folks, and to their own family members. And it's sad and disturbing, but the purpose of this show is not to feel bad about it. It's to do something about it. It's to arm yourself with the information and have the opportunity to fight back. So.
Yeah. And that information is obviously important. And if you need his help, case@brochulaw.com to get in touch with him. We talked about something in the break that I think we definitely need to bring up here. You were telling me about a case you had in which the payment was incorrectly paid to an ex-spouse, and then depending on where you are at the federal level or the state level, that's a different scenario. So in that situation, the payment of an ex-spouse incorrectly, how does the person who was supposed to be paid out, the current spouse, how do they eventually get the money that they're rightfully deserved?
The question of whether or not ex-spouse can be paid really comes down to what type of policy it is. So if it's a federal employee group life insurance policy, a service member group life insurance policy, or a veterans group life insurance policy, those are the three main types of federal policies that we have. They govern all federal employees and all service members and veterans if you have one of those. Those types of federal policies, as governed under our current federal statute, would pay an ex-spouse. They would pay anyone. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be the worst person in the world. They're going to pay it because the objective of that statute is to pay who the service member, veteran, or federal employee wants. If it was a a private policy that's governed by state law in Florida would prohibit the payment of policy proceeds to an ex-spouse. There may also be something if you've been divorced, and maybe something in your final divorce agreement that would prohibit payment or require payment or something like that. So it really just depends. But the other part of it too is in the state of Florida, depending on the type of policy, the current spouse, if they're trying to pay the ex-spouse or someone else, they may have a right to what's called elective share. So they may still have a right to a portion of that policy, but it just depends on what type it is. And the last thing I'll say about that as well is if you are an ex-spouse and you are paid and someone's contesting it, or you are the current spouse and they're trying to pay an ex-spouse, or you're the kids and they're trying to pay an ex-spouse. It doesn't matter what scenario it is. If it involves an ex-spouse and somebody's contesting it, you may want to speak with an attorney, because the insurance company could flag that as a major issue and you may have to defend a lawsuit. Or you may have the ability to contest an ex-spouse from receiving the proceeds.
Absolutely. So when you bring that up, in terms of, obviously, if it happens in the state of Florida, that's what you handle. But at the federal level, if someone needs help in like a federal court situation in that circumstance, is that something you can help with, or would you have to maybe point them somewhere else to get help at the federal level?
Absolutely. I think that I don't know. There aren't as many cases at the federal level as you would see in other areas of the law, right? If you looked at certain consumer statutes, there are 2,000 lawsuits a year filed. One of them has gone away it's not very helpful, but thanks to a Supreme Court case that came down recently. But I've got federal employee group life insurance cases, service member group life insurance cases, veterans group life insurance cases. Those occur all around the country. I take them all across the country. Even though I'm licensed in only the state of Florida, I can take them in federal court elsewhere beyond the 11th Circuit by hiring or co-counseling with local counsel, and that's how I can do it. And I actually, this past December, had an arbitration trial up in Philadelphia that we won for 3 siblings. And it was this policy under federal employee group life insurance. The individual that had passed away was a Department of Defense employee. And that was a situation where that's probably one of the furthest, besides the few federal employee group life insurance cases that made it to the Supreme Court, that's probably the furthest that we've got. And we actually had a pretty good decision from that case too. There was an order denying the insurance company's motion for summary judgment, which was essentially them saying that my clients did not have a right to pursue as beneficiaries or potential beneficiaries. And the court actually said that they did. So we had a solid win there. If you have any federal employee group life insurance, service member group life insurance, or veterans group life insurance, we're happy to take a look. It's certainly something within our legal area and what we do. And, ultimately, if it's something that we cannot assist you with, then you won't owe us anything. The only way we get paid is if you get paid. Yeah,
I was gonna bring that part up, but it's there's really no risk to contact you, right? I mean, to your just point that you made, unless you get paid, Chris isn't getting paid. So really, there's no reason to not contact you, right? Even if you have a question, you might be able to help. You might not, but you might be able to.
Sure. I mean, 100% of nothing is still nothing. So your risk is you maybe are out, a few minutes of your time, maybe out having to send some documents. But at the end of the day, I don't think you're any worse off by speaking with us. You certainly haven't spent any money to do it if you give us a call. Obviously, if you go elsewhere, you may have to pay to get a review or
just even have a conversation. Yeah, right. Absolutely. So yeah, if you're in that situation, case CASE at brochulaw.com, BROCHU law.com, or on the phone 904-201-1771. This is 104.5 WOKV, Jacksonville's news and talk. A lot of numbers right there. Yeah, phone number, 104.5.
That's right.
A lot of numbers, okay? If you miss any of it, go back. I'm going to give you more numbers, WOKV.com. Maybe I'm not. Those are just letters. And you can listen back to this, or on Chris's website. You can see a video version and see me and Chris sitting here talking to each other. That's brochulaw.com. Justin's helping us get that up and operated with Nova Productions. All right, Chris, does the insurance company most times want to go to Interpleader if they're in a situation where they're, is that something they're looking to do rather than maybe making it right? Is that a way they want to go, or is that a last case scenario?
Now, I don't know if the life insurance company would appreciate me saying that it's that they don't want to help, but they certainly are interested in protecting their bottom line. So paying the wrong party is not what they're in the business of doing, but searching out the truth and having to determine who the right party is at their own potential expense, certainly not something that they want to do either. So what happens is, if you can get to the insurance company before they've paid any of the money, that is the best case scenario, because again, if you hire us, what we can do is we'll contact the life insurance company and say, hey, please suspend payment of this. We believe that one of these defenses may apply, right? Especially considering our client is the one that told us. We've probably submitted some medical evidence or some other evidence, and the insurance company will say, well, we don't want to pay the wrong party, so let's just hold off. We'll give them 30 days. And during the 30 days, we'll draft a demand letter. We'll research the case law in whatever jurisdiction it's in, and we'll figure out, okay, where is this case headed potentially, and what defenses or legal rights does the potential client have? And then basically from there, what happens is the life insurance company will review our position, and their attorney will review our position, right? And they'll say, this is not, or this is something that we agree with, right? And if they agree with us that our client may have a position, or they agree that they may have a right, under federal or state law, then what they'll do is they'll file that interpleader. And interpleader, again, if you're just tuning in, is simply interpleader equals when a life insurance company doesn't know who to pay. And again, this is just this context. There are other contexts for interpleader, but interpleader equals when a life insurance company does not know who to pay. And basically, they'll file it in the court where the parties reside and where they're able to, either under state law or federal law, and then go from there. So
in a scenario we've used a little bit before, fictional, obviously, but say we're both in a situation where we both submit information and think we should be paid out by a life insurance policy, and it goes into an interpleader situation. How long does that take for the rightful party to be paid out? Is that a long process? Is that a short process? Just in general, what can somebody expect if they're in that situation?
I loved our show, Casey, because you ask all of the questions that I get asked, and it's so important because, not only to understand how life insurance cases in interpleader, how clients pay for those and how they work, but also the life of a case and how it operates. So it depends on a few things. So if we're still in a pre-suit capacity where the insurance company is investigating and we're investigating, there might be some communication between the parties, the beneficiaries, maybe their attorneys, maybe the insurance company. That would all depend. Once the case has been filed in federal court, we'll use that as an example. I mean, it most likely is probably you'll have your trial scheduled a year to 18 months out.
Wow.
State court, certainly 18 months. That's the time frame. But ideally, and if you were to try to hone in on a time frame, I mean, 6 months to 2 years. And that may seem like a long time, folks. I mean, 6 months seems like an eternity from now. But in the life of a case, when your deadlines are 30 days and 60 days and 14 days, I mean, that time goes so fast. And again, ultimately your time frame to wait, your analysis for your own family needs to be, is it worth 2 years of my life to get money that I think I'm entitled to, or is it worth getting nothing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think most families would say, you know what, 2 years of our life, if we knew we had that opportunity, if we knew we had that option, would be worth it. And the important thing is for us to inform you and for you to make the best decision for your family.
Absolutely. And let's go back to something we talked about a little bit last episode, but I think it applies here now, especially with what we're talking about with Interpleader. But before you get to that point, obviously you have to submit a death certificate and to prove that you are the rightful owner to that money. we talked about the red flags, right? What is that red flag that if you send away your information and you haven't heard in a certain amount of time, when is the time that you should be like, hey, then they should contact you?
30 days. 30 days. If you believe you're entitled to a life insurance policy and you submit a claim form, right, beneficiary claim form, and you submit the insured, your loved one's death certificate, and you haven't received a check in the mail in 30 days, red flag, red flag, red flag. And what will happen a lot of times is the insurance company will notify you, hey, Chris, hey, Casey, you are not the named beneficiary, or maybe you are, but somebody's contesting it. We're denying your right to it, but we'll give you 30 days to find an attorney and assert, a potential legal claim. And if you can think of one, if you can think of a legal reason that you may be entitled, please present it. Please present the law and tell us why you are entitled to the money. And if we agree, or again, the exposure is there for the insurance company because they think that there are two reasonable legal claims, that's how we arrive at Interpleader.
And that's in that point when you said that the insurance companies can give you 30 days to find a lawyer, that's when they should contact you, right?
Time is always of the essence in any of these cases. So if you have the ability and the opportunity to, you really should. Now, sometimes, in that federal employee group life insurance case that we talked about earlier, the insurance company had paid that a third party before my clients ever contacted me. At that point in time, our options are quite limited. And the problem with these types of cases, and again, it doesn't mean that you don't have a case, but it's fighting a battle that's that you can collect, right? Because ultimately, if you are fighting a battle to purely out of pride and to win, your payment isn't even worth the paper it's written on because you can't collect, right? So in a case where they haven't paid out, the insurance company's checks aren't going to bounce, right? They're federally insured in most cases. They're going to have the money to pay. But if the money is paid to a third party that doesn't have, 6 figures sitting in their bank account, it's going to be pretty difficult to collect from them. So you can't include them in a lawsuit, but obviously if the insurance company messed up and paid the wrong party, it's their job to get the money back that they improperly paid. It's not your job to do their job, right? You don't need to fix their mistake. And a lot of times, again, they might disagree with that. They might tell you that it is your fault. You should have submitted something. But yeah, the biggest thing is if you have the ability, time is always of the essence. You want to investigate it. You want to call an attorney before they've paid it because it's always you always have more options, right? You always have the money. The money is still there technically. Mm-hmm. And even if it is denied, you still have the ability to investigate your legal rights.
Absolutely. And you said something that just clicked in my mind a couple of minutes ago here on Protecting Military Families with Chris Brochu on 104.5 WOKV. With a missed proper payment, let's just say, I'll give you a fictional scenario that you've probably dealt with, but the wrong person is paid out in a situation and now someone's looking to get their money. Do they go at the insurance company? Do they go for the person that was mispaid because they have the money or they did at one point? What should someone in that situation do? Where should they try to collect their money from?
I would always look to see if the money's been paid. And if the money has not been paid, then we would talk about going and submitting a demand to the the life insurance company. But if the money has already been paid out, then we need to figure out if the insurance company paid the right party. Because ultimately, in that federal employee group life insurance policy I talked about where we represented the kids of a former Department of Defense employee, it wasn't my client's fault that they paid the wrong party. My clients did everything in their power to make sure that they paid the right party. Thankfully, we were able to recover the full policy amount plus interest, right? But it wasn't my client's problem that they paid the wrong party. It was the life insurance company's problem. And the part of this that's so frustrating is that even after the life insurance company may or may not know that they paid the wrong party, in some instances, like, in some of these federal policies, they actually have the ability to claw it back, to reclaim that money and go after that person. But obviously, as we all know, the longer that time goes by, that money may go to other things. Yeah, it could disappear, right? It's not like somebody's stashing it in the Cayman Islands, but maybe, maybe they're spending it on daily life and they don't have, 300,000 kicking around after that, right? Yeah. So it's always better to, every case is different. Every life insurance claim is different. Every life insurance delay or denial is different. There are similarities, but the biggest thing is you got to act quickly. Time is always of the essence. You've got to call an attorney if that is an option that you think is best for your family.
Absolutely. And a couple minutes left here. But obviously, when you're talking about life insurance, it is heavy because when you're getting paid out in a life insurance policy, obviously you're talking about the loss of someone, and that is incredibly sad. So Chris is just here to make sure that you get what you were promised and what was promised from this life insurance company. So if you're in a situation like that, to get the information and get the help of Chris, you're going to go case, C-A-S-E, at brochulaw.com. That's how you can get in touch with Chris, and he will help you out. But we're going to leave it on a little bit of a lighter note. Chris Brochu, as I understand it, now a married man. Do I have that correct?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about your lovely new wife. Obviously, you've known her for a while, but give the listeners a little bit of how your wedding went. Obviously, we don't want to go too deep into your life, but just a little bit of how your wedding went and how exciting of a day it was for you.
Great. I am the luckiest guy in the world. My wife is Sarah, and she's amazing. We've known each other since college. We both went to Coastal Carolina together, and she's incredible. She supported my journey representing service members and veterans. She's always, the sounding board when we've got new ideas. She's always helping with just giving back, and just my rock. Absolutely. I mean, there's no other way to put it. So
absolutely. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to Sarah. Let me ask you this. I got married in March. The whole time I had planned, I'm not going to cry, right? I'm not going to cry when she's walking towards me. I lost it, man. I was bawling. Did you cry?
For sure.
That's probably the right thing to do. So that'll do it here for another edition of Protecting Military Families with Chris Brochu. We're back next Sunday at this time. If you want to find a stream of the show, watch it back, 104.5 WOKV.com, or on Chris's website, brochulaw.com. Justin from Nova Productions is helping us put that on. So check that out. Check out Chris's website. Get at him if you need him. We'll talk to you next week. Have a great week.